Okay. Welcome everybody. This is the 25th of January delivery system sync and demo. We have several discussion points today. So I'm going to start with those. The first one is obviously we are at the end of Q4, beginning of Q1 financial year 24. So we have some discussion around OKRs. Thank you everybody for filling and proposing ideas on the OKR issue that I'm going to link. We already had some discussion this morning on delivery stuff weekly and trying to understand also what can be achieved or cannot be achieved during this quarter. I mean, we have plenty of ideas, plenty of work. I guess we probably need a team of so many people if we want to achieve everything. Actually, what we have been proposed this morning, based on the proposal on the OKR issues, but also based on on the work that we achieved in the previous quarter, is something a bit that is still contributing to the reducing release management toil and effort, and at the same time is an acceleration of the work we've done so far. So initially, the idea was to have an OKR that was a kind of shared goal between the two groups, orchestration and system, especially in reducing release management toil. We have an epic for that, epic 744. These things have been changed since the last couple of weeks. Especially orchestration has a lot of still effort going on for the backward maintenance policy and everything. So they're carrying over some work there. So I think this is actually the OKR that is proposed here, that is the next iteration of the pipeline observability foundation, is actually going to contribute to both system specific parts, since metrics is also one of our domains, and at the same time helping to reduce, or at least to highlight where we are spending time on release management and how we can take next steps to try to improve that. So the wording of the objective needs to be changed. Feedback that got I don't know, half an hour ago. Initially was this build delivery pipeline intelligence through pipeline observability as a second iteration. So I'm going to have this on Marin's suggestion to highlight better the value objective. And the key result, the main key result that we have seen there was having the capability of visualization and alerting for metric and traces. This is something that right now we are sending traces to the group observability backend, the OpenTelemetry format. We can visualize them. What is still problematic because of the tooling that's been offered so far is to group them per stage and per job, so we cannot really maybe understand, only QA jobs, how long they are taking, or only a particular site of our pipelines, how long it's taking, right? At least not in an easy way. And having understanding trends, understanding if these are increasing, decreasing, and having capabilities of maybe alerting when we see an increasing trend or something like that would be a nice to have. The second key result and the third key result, this is something that has been discussed this morning with Ruben, during our one-on-one. And I think was during the APEC and EMEA delivery weekly. Measuring time lost due to pipeline failures contributed to release management toil. So this is something that Ruben here, correct me if I'm wrong, is about when the time that we spend between the pipeline failure and when we actually retrigger a pipeline, or the pipeline is kind of recovering. So it would be really great to measure and have a good understanding of how this is, which kind of factor is playing on the overall release management. And another OKR would be to capture, measure, report incident-related deployment blockers. Is, I think, something that we're still understanding it was possible to do using webhooks, and understanding if it's possible to understand from when the incident is declared to when the labels are applied and to when the labels are removed, how much time actually we are spending on deployment blockers. Another suggestion that we got this morning on the delivery stuff weekly was to try to have some other project ready in case that we have some we are actually extremely efficient in achieving this OKR pretty quickly. In this in the entire planning that we had so far, this also is taking into consideration some parts of how much availability we're going to have the next quarter. So we have some people having some time off for very nice reasons, like Scarbeck, and some people like being here and working, or like people like Vladimir still onboarding. We'll have to train for release management during 15.10 and maybe go into a rotation in 15.11 for release management. So we have also to be mindful of the availability that we have and the kind of firepower, allow me the word, that we have to tackle all this work, right? So Jenny, Ahmad, Ruben, don't feel too much pressure because you are the one not having got competing time off. I mean, all of this obviously is always a good thing to have. Any thoughts about this OKR proposed? Anything to add? Anything you disagree with, or any other proposal you might have?
I enjoy the current proposal related around observability. I would love to see that through because I feel like it's going to serve a very useful purpose, especially when it comes to our future and deciding what target pain points we want to address. So having that information as soon as possible would be tremendously beneficial, not only for us, but for maybe also engineering teams where we integrate with other things such as QA or working with development teams and what they need for us when it comes to deployments and such. As far as future items, I feel like we could go a lot of different directions. It's like I kind of want to hear other people's opinions before I showcase mine.
Anyone has anything to propose for other items?
It's not proposal, but mostly question about suggestion from Marion. Keep some project work ready, scoped and refined. What sort of projects we are talking about? Are we talking about like a project outside of OKR? So what is that?
Yeah, so I mean,
it's really clear.
As you all suggested in the OKR issue, we have so many things we could tackle, right, as OKR, but also like, in the case we have something that me and Skarbek spoke about. I think also I spoke to you about a bit, Vladimir. One of the things that keeps coming up, at least since I joined this company, is the deployments of software changes or image changes and infrastructure changes. So this is something that it caused some problems already, also like a couple of months ago. So it's always like causing some incidents or some like small hiccups during our deployment process. So having something like that fully scoped and fully ready to be picked up in the case we have extra capacity, I think is something that's going to be like extremely useful, no? And having some focused effort to use for the next quarter as well. Clearly not seen as an OKR because we can also, I think if we also add that, maybe we do overcommit a bit too much, but having something ready that could be picked up that is already kind of a OKR-ish, allow me the word, effort to come up, I think would be great, right? This is also something, as Skarbek said, open to suggestion of what we can, what we actually could look at.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you.
Skarbek, you must start with your proposal.
There's a few things that come to mind, but I don't know how to prioritize this, nor which direction will be the best. But I think all of us on this call are aware that I'm interested in seeing what experimental deploys look like in the deep dark future. I would love to see what we could do as a whole because there's a lot of groundwork that needs to be laid before this is something that we could enable for people in the future. So I feel like if we wanted to pull work related to this, it's only we need groundwork level, and it's not going to be something that we could shove into an OKR because there's too much work that we need to accomplish before we start integrating with team orchestration to enable the capabilities, right? You know, we need to do stuff towards our infrastructure and stuff to the GitLab com repository before we enable this to be a feature that anyone could use. Another idea I've come across is pondering different ways that we could deploy the GitLab infrastructure as a whole. This is something I recently just kind of thought to myself, but like the GitLab operator, this is something that's not yet production ready. Distribution is horribly busy working on this. They're trying to hire additional people for this. There are external customers that leverage the GitLab operator, and I would love to see if this is something that would be worth at least checking out to see whether this could replace our use of Helm. I feel like Helm is a very contested thing. I think this is one of the reasons why we're looking at other POCs from reliability with the use of Argo or Flux and such. I would love to see what capabilities the operator could provide for us and see if we could leverage the operator to make certain pain points that we experience easier for ourselves, because we're then contributing to the distribution team and helping the operator at that point. And I think that would be a good cross collaboration if that's the thing that we want to chase. And then the other thing that was on my mind, and Michele, you kind of already mentioned this, but you know, we do have issues in our backlog related to workflow management in the GitLab com repo that, you know, if we don't solve them, eventually we're going to cause an incident, and I want to avoid that. And the one that you mentioned about ensuring that we're keeping configuration changes and auto deployments completely segregated is very important. I don't want us to be in a situation where we cause an incident and we've got this corrective action that's been in our backlog for over a year now that we've yet to touch. But it's hard for me to think about that kind of thing because I don't know what we could do to fix that at the moment.
Good. Thank you, Skarbek. Vladimir, we are not that polite.
No worries. I just get used to it. I wanted to say that GitLab operator sounds like a very good idea. It's still in my to-do list to review that and see how it works actually. But basically, I have a question. Is it like GitLab operator installs GitLab itself, or it configures the GitLab like repositories or something, you know, on existing GitLab installation?
The GitLab operator's intention is to provide another method of installing GitLab itself. So this would be replacing our Helm chart install with the use of the GitLab operator to both manage, install, and configure GitLab itself inside of our Kubernetes clusters. We would still have the situation where we're running both Omnibus and a Kubernetes infrastructure, but the GitLab operator would replace our use of Helm. The operator itself uses Helm under the hood in some way, shape, or form. This is something I'm not fully up to speed on because I have not looked at the code base either and how it works. But those are the details I know, at least at this moment in time.
What I mean is, well, definitely having GitLab operator and CRD deployed on different namespaces, for example, that's gonna help us with this how to say, these experimental deployments or something. But in general, it's more or less the same as we have Helm charts and the value files and the operator thingy. But the thing is that we might from my point of view, the setup where we have like Helm files and Tanaka and Terraform and etc., like a whole bunch of zoo of technologies, I think, and it's all controlled by push-based pipelines, which also like 5,000 lines of auto-generated code. I think it's way too complicated, and I do believe that one of the OKRs, maybe not that quarter or maybe next quarter, would be to somehow simplify the things. And GitLab operator sounds like it will simplify the things a lot. Or I don't know. Again, like maybe yeah. Well, GitLab operator, use of GitLab operator will eliminate the need of all these huge pipelines, I think. So since it's just like kubectl apply CRD and that's it.
I do not disagree. I think like your terminology of the zoo of tools resonates with me very well, because I hate the fact that we've got so many. And this is one of the reasons why I'm really eager to see what the reliability team wants to do in the future, because I want to make sure that we don't have more animals in our zoo, I guess. But yeah, I think, I don't know, like there's a lot of options for us to go in terms of project work. I just don't know what the best direction to go to is at the moment. But I don't know, I kind of lean towards trying to figure out what we want to do with the GitLab com repository as a whole, to kind of set ourselves for a solid future foundation for what we understand and how to maintain that repository going forward. I just don't know what that looks like at this moment in time. Like even if we try to, like if we want to move forward towards trying to figure out what's closest towards getting us towards experimental deploys, I don't know what work would lend itself for like small, easy chunks of work that we could pull that gets us closer to that goal at this moment in time.
I think that what will definitely enable experimental deploys is the how to say is the way to move away from this big installation and treat it as like a pet towards the easier installations that we can just spin up on demand. And I think GitLab operator would be one of the option, and another option would be GitOps as well, and Argo, which is which reliability team is introduced. But knowing the fact that GitLab will have support for other like rethinking GitOps support for the whole for the whole product. I think I don't think we need to go to Argo. That's kind of how it calls sunk cost fallacy.
Yeah.
So
I think also in light of what Uscarbe posted this morning in GDelivery, right? About Flux. So, I mean, would be great if as a company, we actually like sit in one solution that we actually offer to our customers and we use it ourselves, right? And not having like...
Actually, I wanted to ask this question. If we are going to use Flux as a company, are we going to change our CI/CD offering to actually, because I think GitLab is also CI/CD or has a CI/CD offering somehow. So are we going to change that, or how this is going to work?
GitOps it has nothing to do with CI/CD. At least it has nothing to do with CI portion.
Yeah,
maybe with CD portion.
CD
but
portion, yeah.
Yeah. But But the thing is that you can the only difference between like the current approach with pipelines and the GitOps approach with code that it's actually pulling the things, like it's push and pull and you can run the same pipelines or combine like the really complicated deployment mechanism which includes pipelines into GitOps as well. There is no like a conceptual conflict here. It's only the way from where it executes. Like even like is it executing from like a central point, or it execute the same thing but from the local GitOps agent. Not local, but from the GitOps agent that runs on every single cluster.
Yeah, I don't think it wasn't made clear, at least to me, and maybe I just haven't read far enough into this. It's not made clear to me where or how rather GitLab is integrating with Flux. So I almost wonder if it might be worth making whatever changes are necessary to the GitLab com repo such that it supports GitOps in some way, shape, or form, and keeping track of what the configure team is doing, because then maybe we could be ready for the transition towards using that integration when it starts to become a little bit more mature. But I guess the hesitation I have is, we understand how things work today, even though it's got all kinds of interesting issues. My concern would be, if something isn't mature and we lose features as we migrate towards that solution that we have today that we may not have available to us during their first couple of iterations of said feature. So I think there's going to be some trade-offs that we need to make as we pay attention to that project.
I think now nothing stops us currently. If we decided to go that direction, nothing stops us to move existing stuff to GitOps. We don't even need to get rid of these Helm files. You can, as I already showed, you can generate values from these Helm files, and then you can use those values in GitOps workflow. Yeah, well, I think the whole Flux story, it might take few months, up to half a year, I think, because they planned like a UI, they planned like authentication and secret management and etc. etc. So like initially I thought like, okay, it's going to be like a very simple proof of concept, but they just blown up the scope drastically, and they added like a lot of functionality. But again, like nothing stops us to start now if we decide, or at least like make a proof of concept for that and be ready for like a full Flux integration with the GitLab product.
Thank you. Skarbek, you want to verbalize that one or something as well? Perfect.
Just noting that we've got an issue in our backlog, and that's the one that kind of tracks. It may need to be refined because it's quite old, but that's the one where Graham had the initial idea of swapping how we manage that current repo and making it more GitOps centric. But like I said, it's kind of old at this point. It probably needs a good amount of refinement before we try to figure out what we want to do and pull it.
Okay. So we don't have to, scope something new by Monday or something like that for this extra project work we are doing. Monday we actually have, we need to have our OKRs aligned. And I think if we all agree about the pipeline foundations one and everything, I think if you're in agreement there, that's going to be like, our official OKR, something like that. I guess I'm going to also put some times for us together, maybe next week or like in 10 days from now, where we can actually like keep this discussion ongoing and understand what we could pick as a team, as an extra project to have it there ready where everyone is aligned with that. Definitely, I see that there is a lot of.
Hello.
Yeah, it's Michele.
Yeah.
It's Mexico.
Starlink. Michele.
Yeah,
Sorry?
you're back.
You dropped like for 20 seconds.
20 seconds. Oh my God, guys. I said so many things in 20 seconds. I said that on Monday, we're going to put our OKR pipeline foundations, like next iteration. If everyone, is in agreement here, and then maybe like in a weeks from now, something like that, we can have a kind of brainstorming session as a team. I think would be useful, where we can actually understand also where we want to go with extra project work and continue the discussion actually we had today about, how we handle GitOps, how we can just be more like look at what good direction of GitOps and everything else, and like how GitLab operator as well and everything, right? So I think it's worth it to have a separate session for that, where we actually come up also with and agree on some project work we want to tackle, maybe in parallel, if we are able to also finalize the observability one at a earlier stage. Am I gone again?
No, yeah, there.
Good.
I think we had an issue open for Skabek's third idea, right? The separation of image and software changes.
Yes. Yes.
I remember
yes.
there was an issue.
There is this one, I think is 751. I don't know how my brain remembers only numbers and not titles, but let me add it here. Here it is. I'm gonna add it to this one. Anything else on this topic, or we move to point B?
I guess just really quickly, before you start sending out an invite for a segregate meeting for this, should we try to gather any more opinions about this overall on the current OKR issue that we've got open and currently has a lot of discussion items around all this stuff?
I mean, that one is, we can, the scope of also the meeting today is to set on our OKR for our team for this quarter, right? So if we are setting the OKR on this next iteration of pipeline observability, yes, we can continue like working there as gathering more ideas as a extra project work we can take, and I think it's going to be useful also maybe for the next quarter if we need to pick up something. Yeah, let's continue the discussion there. Let's just make sure that even if we send the right message that we agreed on an OKR, but extra project work we might consider is, and you can just list all the options that we want to have. Does it make sense?
I think that makes sense, but I think we should probably start a new thread for this target question on that issue, just so that we are looking in the same place to answer that question, I guess.
Perfect. Do you want to start to create a new thread, Skabek?
Sure, I could do that.
Thank you.
The separation of config and deployment changes, I think, is something that we've been discussing a long time.
Yeah.
So it would be really nice to work on that.
I think this is one of the first things that, speaking with some of you, I think it was you, Skabek or Alessio, as soon as I joined, I think the phone say, what's the main problem here? Someone immediately like this is like the main problem we have right now. Someone just came to week 2 or week 3 already with this. So, and I mean the company since, I don't know, 8 months now, something like that. So and we still are discussing that for sure. It probably is there since much longer than that.
Probably the RM around that time must have been having a lot of conflicts.
Probably.
I have a question regarding that. So as far as I know, the root of the problem is that we had some MR on infrastructure, GitLab.com or whatever, and this MR contained like a version update for some services and the infrastructure changes in the same time, right? And then we just merged this and auto deploy, kind of deployed everything. And that was a big mistake because it somehow conflicted, right?
Not conflicted, but more like we're pushing two changes at the same time when we're not meaning to. And we want to avoid those situations because if it were to cause an incident, we want to know whether it was a software change or a configuration change. And because of the right timing of those style of merges happening, we are introducing too much variability inside of a deployment. So what we're trying to attempt to do is segregate those items to prevent additional workload when it comes to incident management and trying to identify the root cause.
But I'm just wondering, shouldn't we, like, I know there is like a technical solutions for that. Things like I don't know, like open policy agent and Kyverno and etc., and write the tests. But I think it's just my experience with open policy agent. I don't know if we are using that or not, but it's freaking complicated. It's like really, really complicated topic. And would it be overkill for such a thing and introduce open policy agent for this kind of thing that can be simply, you know, changed by process somehow, like during the review process, you can just say like, okay, like please check if version changes at the same time as configuration. That would be like very simple solution, changing in the issue template, right? Adding one checkbox rather than really digging into this rabbit hole with open policy agent.
I think we should continue this conversation elsewhere, but the problem comes in the fact that we don't have the capacity to ensure that when we're merging a configuration change, that there's not already an auto deploy running or going to start. Like we need something that says there's an auto deploy happening, don't merge this yet. Or we need some sort of locking mechanism somewhere that says you've merged this, but we're not going to push it out because something is in your way on purpose, or vice versa with an auto deploy.
It's not because config change and the configuration, or sorry, config change and the application change was in the same MR. That's because of auto deploy was running and at the same
Precisely.
time. Okay, now I understand. Yes, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. I think also good for everybody to regain scope on that since it's keep coming up. Ruben, one seed, you know, verbalized.
So during today's meeting, well, first when in Alessio's office hours and then in the delivery weekly, there were a couple of ideas for new metrics. So one was a metric to track the time lost when a job in a deployment pipeline fails. So for example, say a job fails, say a QA job fails, and you retry it twice, and after the second retry, it passes. So the time from the first job when it started to the time when the successful job started, that's all lost time. So that can be automatically added to a metric and, you know, build some kind of, you can use that number to track like release manager toil. The other one, sorry, go ahead.
one question there. So we want to track the time between, let's say, if a job is failing and then the time starts, and then the time ends when the same job starts to work again, right?
Yeah. So like say you have a QA test job failing. So it fails once, you retry, it fails again, you retry again, then it passes. So there are 3 runs. So at the start, from the start of the first run to the start of the third run is all wasted time.
Yeah.
Then the third run is like a successful run. So that's like a normal run.
Yeah.
Yeah. While I was in my ARM rotation, it was manually tracked. I don't know if we still do it, but basically, yeah, that would get rid of that need to manually track how many like hours have been lost because of those retries, because it's like not an incident, obviously, right? But it is still time lost. So it'd been a nice thing to track automatically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's something that we started tracking only recently. Before that,
Yes.
we've never tracked it, not even manually. So yeah, it will remove one manual task from the RM workload. So yeah, that'll also help. Any other questions?
Not so far.
Otherwise, the other metric is to track when the blocks deployment label is added to an incident issue. So if we can automatically track it, like using issue webhooks, if we can automatically track it, then when the label is added, we add it to a metric, and when the label is removed, we remove it from the metric. So that will allow us to have like a timeline for when deployments were blocked by incidents. That will also help with removing the manual work of adding blocks labels to all incidents. Any questions about that? Or any ideas for improving that?
I think they're both great ideas.
Okay, then I guess John has the next item.
Yeah, these are just ideas for like new or other things that we could track. But this is not related to auto deploy. This is specifically related to like our release procedures, which I have no clue how you would do this at the moment. But I feel like this is also really good stuff that we could use for the same reasons. You know, we're tracking release toil in other areas of our processes. So like if we had a Jaeger trace for starting the upcoming security release, for example. You know, the start of the trace is when the procedure is open, and the end of the trace is when the procedure is closed. And then we have like a timeline that captures every individual step and how long it took. Like, I don't know what that would look like because there's a lot of variability in, you know, when we check things off, for example, or like why pipelines are the way they are. But like, I feel like there's a use case for us to track this in some way. I just don't know how we would do that or such, but just some thoughts. And those were the items I listed were things that I thought were interesting.
So for the first one, sorry.
Go ahead.
For the first one, time between start of procedure and completion of procedure, do you mean like security releases or patch releases?
Yeah, any release technically, but yeah.
So I think you were thinking of traces, right?
Yeah.
We could hook into the GitOps commands that we usually run at the start and end, and use that to generate metrics or traces. Might be possible.
The thing that I, for caution though, is that, you know, like weekends occur, you know, family and friends days interrupt us, and like there are other reasons outside of, you know, not having working hours for why certain things take longer than others. So like you can't compare a security release from last month to a security release from this month because the whole timeline would have been shifted. So I feel like we need to dive into those target items to determine what slows us down and what builds that release toil. for those procedures. And I think this is just kind of one way to start that process. So I don't know how valuable some of this is. These are just ideas.
So, in terms of the pipeline of a release going through, I think that metric can be pretty easily taken from the tracing that we have set up, right? If it's going from like the beginning to end, then we can just get the timestamps. I think in terms of where we get release toil in terms of like the bot not getting signed well and stuff like that, it's a bit more ambiguous, I feel. And that'll be something that we'll have to discuss further on how to track. Because that's like, do we track the going back and forth between people and their time zones? Like that's not like, maybe feasible as much. Yeah.
Something we could track maybe would be the number of times the bot gets automatically unassigned and then reassigned.
So you'd run this like at the end of a release cycle and then scrape for that bot, I guess.
No, you
That
could
bot activity.
you could set up like a merge request webhook. I think there are merge request webhooks. If there are, you could use that to yeah. So like
Okay.
whenever any event happens in the merge request, like the bot is assigned or the bot is unassigned, you'll get notified. Then you can increase a metric, decrease a metric.
Right.
Alessio had suggested in the weekly meeting that for the issue where we want to track release manager toil, instead of trying to condense it right away into one metric, we can have like a dashboard of multiple metrics, and for now use human judgment to decide one number out of all those, and then slowly we can start combining. So we can track like individual items like this that we know increase release manager toil, and then use that to get like a holistic picture.
That sounds good.
Who added the count of abandoned packages? That also I think would be very useful.
I did. And to address Ahmad's question, that's geared towards auto deployments, but I'm looking at, I guess my idea with this was last month we abandoned one of our security patch releases. And we end up retagging a new version. That's what I was gearing towards with that particular comment. I know that's a very rare thing to occur, but currently, as we saw, it creates a huge amount of toil to address the fact that we skipped a version. That created a lot of problems to get that release completed. So I think just knowing that information would be kind of crucial. I don't know.
Oh, I was thinking of auto deploy packages.
Yeah, me too. I understood the same.
Both would be useful, actually. By the way, just an interesting thing about that. So the reason that happened is because when we say publish this security release, we don't give it the versions in the chatops command. We just tell it to publish, and then release tools tries to determine which is the next version. And it does that by looking at version.gitlab.com. So when we don't publish an in-between version because something went wrong, we don't create the version in version.gitlab. So the chatops command was publishing the wrong thing. While for a normal release, non-security, we specify the version. So that can be solved by simply, specifying the version each time.
Great. Do we want to have an issue where we collect all these ideas for metrics?
Yeah, I think that would be useful. And then
What
as
do you
we
think?
like flesh out the metric, we can open a separate issue just for that metric.
Yeah. So maybe we could have, maybe we can have an issue as part of 744, so track reduce release management tutorial, just a sub issue of that epic that we can use for tracking some to list and track metrics areas.
Sounds good. I'll create that issue. We already have an issue for tracking rollback related metrics.
Yeah.
So yeah, we can have a similar one, or we can just have one issue for all types of metrics.
Yeah, I think, I mean, if it's just for tracking areas, I think we can have just one issue for everything, maybe, and then then we can categorize them there. And then, if then we have a full category of metrics that are going to be useful later on, can become his own epic, and we can work towards this own epic and so on. But at least we have a place that is not this Google Doc that we are using right now, where we can have all the listed ideas over there.
Yeah. So I'll change the description of that issue, which is already there. I'll link it here as well.
Thank you, Ruben. Vladimir.
Well, I think we are running out of time. So do we want
have
to
a few
discuss
minutes
that?
more if everyone. I mean, if it's a full brainstorming session, definitely we need a different session.
Well, I was, I don't know, I was about to, point to the issue that I'm currently facing, and had some ideas how to solve it, basically, because we do have this internal API new service that it's going to be used for GitLab shell. And instead of like going to a public API, it will go to internal API, and it's deployed on pre-environment only currently. And before rolling this to production, we need to actually make sure if it's bringing the value, if it's I don't know if it's worth to do that, and so we need to collect some data. And the thing is that I created the metrics and I created the dashboards, but there is no way to to reduce the blast radius only to pre-environment, and deploying the metrics and the dashboards like on prod and staging, and not on the environments where this service isn't running, might lead to some false alarms, and might wake up the on-call person. And even John's suggestion to kind of put the thresholds to 0, I think it's a little bit error prone, because there is a lot of auto-generated code which you never know what it's gonna generate. So yeah, kind of I'm thinking what to do with that. Ideally, we should be able to deploy like a custom branch on pre-environment from this runbooks repository and see, because you can go and in Grafana in the dashboards, you can actually select not like global but particular Prometheus target, and you can select pre. But I don't know if anyone has any ideas how to do that. It would be super useful for me.
I'm okay to stay 10 extra minutes if everyone has time, and we can have a small brainstorming session and we see where we get. So to the hour, we run out to the hour, and then if this doesn't get us anywhere, I think we can have a separate session for that. Anyone keen?
One question: do we use Prometheus operator, or we use Prometheus operator? So it's basically I can just go and apply those auto-generated rules and alerts from local machine, right?
I think we use it as part of Thanos installation.
But Thanos is kind of global, right? So
Yeah.
Thanos is it's a long-term storage, but every single cluster has its own Prometheus, which Thanos scrape, right? And the local Prometheus is local Prometheus installed using Prometheus operator as well. Then it's gonna be simple. I can just like grab all these auto-generated files and apply them manually from my local branch.
And if I remember correctly, Grafana is pointing towards some sort of global Thanos instance, but it has the knowledge of what environment to send queries to. So like it should know if you're querying a pre-prod environment query, it knows to go talk to that specific Prometheus for that data. So it's not going to try to.
You can select this in the drop down. All right, then that was easy. we'll try to do that. Thank you.
Perfect. I'm happy that we got to the bottom of it in such short time. Thank you, Ahmad. Thank you, Scarlett, for the hints. So we're at the end of the agenda. Anything else you want to add? Thank you for the great meeting and discussion today. Really enjoyed it. Yeah, I guess I'm gonna speak to you later. Have a great rest of your day.